I know. Happy
Hello.
Valentine's Day, you spooky hoes.
Happy what day?
Welcome.
What day is it?
What did I say? Did I say
Valentine's Day?
Valentine's Day?
I think so.
Oh no. Happy St.
Jeez.
Patrick's
Happy
Day.
St.
You
Patrick's Day.
guys, what is wrong with
It's
me?
close enough.
Happy
I was
Valentine's
like,
Day, everyone.
which
Just kidding.
holiday are we on? Because we're
Don't
doing some
know.
obscure holidays these days.
Yeah,
But
but fuck it. Anyway, it's not Valentine's Day. That has passed. Although
yes,
every day you should act like it's Valentine's Day.
that's
Spread the
very
love,
true. Absolutely.
fuckers. But it's St.
That's very
Patrick's
loving.
Day. Yeah, fuckers. But it's St. Patrick's Day, and that means it's a perfect excuse for us to talk about scary stories.
Yes.
Amy has such a good one, and then we have part 6 of 7 of the David
Oh.
saga.
Oh my
So
gosh.
honestly, I'm fucking ready. And I didn't read this one. I decided I want to be
Okay.
blind for the last 2. So I'm going to
Yeah.
be live reacting with you guys
Okay.
because they're just so
That's
good.
it's so exciting. We're gonna need a
It's
recap because it's been a
uh-huh.
while
I know.
since the
It's been a
last
while. Yeah.
part.
I'll get us up to speed again.
Okay.
But
Ooh,
you're first, Aim,
exciting.
so over to you.
Okay. All right. So yeah, Olivia found this one. So credit to you.
So good. So good. I read
Um,
it late at night and I was creeped out.
spooked. Yeah. Oh, it's a good
Uh-huh.
one.
It
Okay.
was a good one.
So this is of course from Reddit, No Sleep, by Blair Daniels, and it's called I Saw Someone Signaling for Help in the Middle of the Lake. Okay. To celebrate our anniversary, my wife and I booked an Airbnb for the weekend, a cabin on the lake. Looks like it's about to rain, Amber said as she rolled her suitcase across the porch. I looked up. To the west, the sky was deep gray, thick storm clouds heading toward us at a steady pace. Just our luck, I grumbled, hauling my suitcase out of the trunk. After we'd gotten everything inside, we poured wine and sat by the picture window overlooking the lake. The sky was darker now, and the glassy stillness of the water reflected the deep gray of the sky. The pine trees surrounding the lake swayed in the wind. Wait, look, Amber said. There's someone out there. At first, I didn't see what she was talking about, but then, as I squinted, I did. In the middle of the lake, there was a tiny, peach colored blob bobbing up and down. Someone was out there, and they were waving their arms around as if signaling for help. Oh God, are they drowning? Amber asked, rushing over to the window. You call the police, I said, getting up and grabbing my jacket. I'll take the rowboat out and try to help. Brave. Um,
Very.
but
And unwise.
yeah. But I guess what else would you do? I feel like instinct kicks
Yeah.
in. Try to
But
help.
like at the same time though, this huge storm is rolling in.
Hmm.
You really want to be on a lake? I don't
Yeah,
know. I don't know.
that's true. Yeah. Ooh, choices.
Yeah.
Um, okay. The Airbnb had advertised a small rowboat that we could use. I could be out in the middle of the lake in under 5 minutes. Given how far we were out from town, it would probably take the police 20 minutes to get here. Amber looked at me as if she were about to say something, but then she just nodded. I zipped up my coat and ran outside. The rain had started. A light drizzle blurred the lake in front of me, wetting my face. I ran down to the docks and undid the knot, then stepped into the boat. It rocked violently underneath me as I sat down and pushed off with the oars. I rowed furiously towards the center of the lake, keeping my eyes on the person. But they were a lot farther out than I had anticipated. Even after rowing 5 minutes, my arm muscles burning, I was only slightly closer. I stopped for a second and cupped my hands around my mouth. Hey, I'm coming to help. Hang in there. They didn't respond, just kept waving their arms over their head. Probably can't hear me, I thought. Sucking in a deep breath, I began to row faster. The rain was harder now. Thick raindrops hit the wood of my boat with a tap, tap, tap. Water dripped down from my hair and into my eyes. I shook my head to get it off, not breaking stroke, and continued rowing towards the center of the lake. The person was finally a little closer now. I could see them bobbing up and down on the surface of the lake through the pelting rain, waving their arms furiously above their head. It looked like it was possibly a woman with dark hair, but I couldn't be certain. The oars sloshed through the lake. I was panting and my arms ached, but I forced myself to continue forward. They weren't that far off now. In just a few minutes, I'd probably be close enough to yell out to them, to see them clearly. Flash. The sky flashed white. Seconds later, the rumble of thunder, so loud I could feel it in my bones. I swallowed. This isn't safe. I glanced back at the cabin. It was so far away now. I could see the tiny brown blob that was Amber standing on the docks waiting for me to return. Maybe we should have just waited for the police. What if I get struck by lightning? I swallowed and turned back to the woman. Paddled as fast as I could with all my might. The rain pelted down furiously, running down my face, pooling in the bottom of the boat. The peach-colored blob grew closer and closer, and then I could see her clearly for the first time. Every muscle in my body froze because as she bobbed on the water, waving her hands above her head, she was smiling. Ugh, so creepy.
Dude, that gives me like major goosebumps, like full body goosebumps. That is so fucking creepy.
Yeah. I agree. I don't know
Oh God.
Why is that so creepy? Like that movie Smile or whatever it was that came out
Uh-huh.
recently.
I
Just
still
watching the
haven't seen that.
preview for that. Oh
Yes.
God.
When
Like
someone
her.
is smiling at you, yeah, when someone is smiling at you in a way that is very clearly not benevolent, that is like one
Mhm.
of the scariest things because it's like there's
Yeah.
something so your brain is telling you that a smile
Mhm.
is a good safe thing and
Yeah.
then you know it's not, and it's like
Yeah.
that like cognitive dissonance, I guess, is
Uh-huh.
so upsetting.
Yeah.
Did I read the story or send you the story about the one where his wife wouldn't stop like smiling at him?
Ew. No. That
Oh
sounds
my
like a
god.
nightmare.
After David, that is going to be my next story. I read it.
Okay.
I was not okay. Like
Yeah.
it's not okay. It's a no sleep one and it is like excellent. It's
Oh
so
God.
fucking creepy.
Yeah. Okay. I already hate
Okay,
that,
sorry.
but can't wait
Yeah.
to
Oh,
hear
you'll
it.
hate it. You'll hate it. Can't wait.
Oh God. Can't wait. I hate this. Read it to me.
I heard this. Read it to me right now.
Amazing. Okay, here we go. So she was smiling. Not just smiling, grinning from ear to ear as she stared at my boat approaching. Instinctively, I grabbed the oars and backpedaled. The water resisted me, kicking up in loud splashes, and then the boat began to slide away from her. Ring! I grabbed the cell phone out of my pocket. It was Amber. Drew, she breathed, her voice wavering on the other end of the line. The police, they said, whatever you do, don't go out into the lake. What? Some psycho has been swimming out into the middle of the lake, luring people out. Just leave her there. Come back. She continued talking, but I didn't hear what she said, because the woman had disappeared. The phone fell.
No.
No,
No.
no,
No.
nope. The phone fell out of my hands. I grabbed the oars and pulled them towards me, rowing backwards toward the shore as fast as I possibly could. I stared into the water, looking for a ripple, a shadow, anything, but it was impossible. With the rain hitting the surface, the reflections of the storm clouds, there was no way I could tell where she was. I rowed faster, my heart pounding in my chest. Glancing over my shoulder, I could see that the dock was still so far away. Amber began waving to me frantically. Flash. The sky, the lake, the pine trees at the shore lit up. A peal of thunder rang in my ears. I rowed faster, and then I heard it. A tap, tap, tap from the bottom of my boat.
No. No.
No. No, she's a monster. Okay, I didn't have time to react before the boat flipped over and I plunged into the ice cold water. I broke the surface and gasped in air, screaming as I grabbed the side of the boat. Something grabbed my ankle and tugged. I plunged back into the water. I struggled to pull myself up, but the iron grip on my ankle wouldn't loosen. I kicked and thrashed, trying to pull myself up towards the shadow of the boat above me. and then the grip released. I broke the surface, gasping. Then I clawed at the boat, desperately righting it. After a few attempts, I was finally able to get myself back inside. I turned it around and rowed as fast as I possibly could, never looking back. Miraculously, the woman didn't follow me. I scrambled up on the dock and Amber hugged me, crying. The police arrived soon after and searched the lake for the woman, but they came up empty handed. Needless to say, Amber and I cut our trip short. We packed our bags and started the drive home just after the sun had set. But as we pulled out of the driveway in the darkness, I swear I saw a light winking at us from the middle of the lake, as if someone was trapped out there signaling for help.
No, absolutely not.
What a psycho.
Dude. Okay,
Ah,
so here's the thing. One, is she human or
right.
like a siren? Two, why
Mhm.
did she let him go?
Yeah, I
As
don't
he's under the
know.
water, she's gripping his ankle. Why'd she let him go?
Right. I wonder if they'll do a follow up to that.
I don't know. I hope so. It was a good one. It was
Yeah,
written
it
kind of
was good.
recently, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it said 3 days ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, three
I
days
love when you
ago.
get the freshies
Oh, I
because they're
know.
just like brand spanking new.
Yeah, because people are writing a lot of comments on it.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe
Usually the
this
ones that get a lot of, yeah, pickup, they have like sequels.
Yeah, right. That's true. Ooh, yeah, somebody says that doesn't sound natural. No way
Mm-mm.
it was a human, blah blah blah. Yeah.
Blah bitty blah.
We'll see
So
what
good.
happens. Oh, but yeah,
Well,
that
we'll
is a good one.
see.
Spooky.
Yeah, that one creeped me out. I need to make a note
Mhm.
to myself to do the smiling one.
Yeah. That's I'm already
So scary,
scared.
dude. Ugh, it's so cringy.
And I can just picture this person in this story, like drowning but smiling.
Hmm.
So upsetting. Yikes.
Beyond. Um. Okay, so time for David.
Yes. Let's hear it.
Okay, so quick recap from part 5. Um. The so um Jack is the eldest brother, the one who like kind of protects Jasmine or Jazzy. And
Mhm.
then the other brothers are Johnny and Jim. And Jim is like kind of a dick
Yeah.
to Jazz. So if you recall, there was like the house was being haunted and they brought in like some like crackpot Irish exorcist that was like not successful, got like literally ran like screaming from the place.
Mhm.
And then finally, I think with the help of Father Brown, they got David out of the house, or the demon out of the house.
Mhm.
And then they're in the house, and then suddenly Jim starts getting really sick. And they're like,
Mhm.
this is weird. So they take him to the hospital and like rising fever, like cannot get him well.
Mhm.
So at the end of that part, where he's, Jim's just like getting worse and worse. He's not eating. Whatever. Like the ER was saying, like it's just a viral infection. It'll get better. And then I'm just like scrolling through this. Oh, and then um, when Jack like wakes up and he's literally laying on these like all these like dead bugs,
Oh
like
yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
so gross, and leaving these, like,
gross.
black streaks as he, like, squirms around to get off of them.
Mhm.
And the, like, parents are horrified, whatever. And then Jim starts, like, kind of freaking out, and he's like, "Get out, get out!" And the dad, took a silver cross from the wall outside of the bedroom, and it, like he pushed it against Jim, and it was, like,
Oh,
sizzling and hissing, and he's, like,
right.
thrashing around in pain and stuff. So
Mhm.
then sorry, our mascot's being aggressive. Jim like gets up and out of bed, runs out of the room into the little baby brother's
Oh.
room,
Mhm.
Joey, and is like Joey's left in his pack and play. And so Jim goes and grabs Joey. And I don't think Jazz is there in the room with them, but she can hear him like half growling, "Hush, little baby," the way
Mm,
David did over the
that's
baby
right.
monitor.
Mhm.
And then Jack is like, "Jim, put him down. Don't you dare hurt him. Put him down." And then Jazz is like looking around for someone to turn to like help. And then the very last line of part 5 is, there was no one. I was alone. And we know what happens when she's alone. So
Oh, yeah. Okay.
that brings us to part
Oh,
6.
yeah. And we thought that was the last part, right? And we were like,
Yeah. And then
what?
we were like, what
What
the
does
fuck?
this mean?
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. Yeah.
I
Let's,
think they hadn't like gone back and updated all of them with all of the parts yet, and so it
yeah.
made it look like that was the last one, and
Yeah.
then it was like the link was like embedded, like hidden at the end. I was like, motherfucker.
Come
Okay,
on.
so
Okay.
part 6. I didn't remember seeing my mother go downstairs, but I realized now that she must have. I didn't know where Johnny had gone, but he wasn't in his bed. I was at the top of the stairs, sobbing uncontrollably as I listened to my family scream at Jim, pleading with him to put his youngest brother down. Joey wailed, sobbing desperately. He screamed for my mother, and Jim screamed back at him to shut up, which only made Joey's wailing worse. I pressed myself against the wall, unable to catch my breath. My hands shook at my sides. My shoulders shook with heavy sobs. I slid down the wall, trying to make myself as small as possible. I covered my ears and pulled my legs up. Slowly, I rocked back and forth, trying not to think of what Jim might do to my little brother. I didn't understand what possession was at the time. I didn't understand that David was controlling Jim's every move. I didn't understand that my brother was no longer my brother. As far as I was concerned, Jim had become a monster. Crash! Joey shrieked. His desperate cries filled the house for 3 terrible, uninterrupted seconds, and then silence. My heart dropped. I was sure he'd died. Drop the knife, my father roared. The house shook with another loud thump, and I could hear something, perhaps boots, knocking against the floor time and time again. And then another scream, this one deeper, filled with a sort of rage that was palpable even from upstairs. I yipped and pulled myself into a tiny ball. My heart thrummed, my mind racing. Tears streamed down my cheeks, and I prayed. I begged God to stop Jim before he killed anyone else. I begged him not to let my family be torn apart any more than it already had been. Bang! The walls shook and the windows rattled. Joey shrieked. Relief, the likes of which I'd never known, flooded me. My little brother was alive. Injured, possibly, but alive all the same. Son of a bitch, Jack shouted. He fucking stabbed me! Crash! The familiar sound of glass shattering and hitting the ground sliced through the silence. There was a series of loud yells and bangs. It sounded as though someone were throwing furniture around downstairs, and it sounded kind of like the night David had been unable to get into Jack's room. Let me go, let me go, let me go, Jim shouted, though his voice wasn't his own. It was scratchy and growled and sounded more like David than Jim. Get off me, I'll kill you, I'll gut that little brat. I'll string you all up from the trees. I'll decorate this house with your fucking blood. I'll make you beg me for death. Don't kill him, Josh, don't kill him, my mom shouted. Bang! We aren't going to kill him, Jack growled. I've never heard him so angry. I've never thought my brother could sound like a monster. Take Joey and get the hell out of here. Where's Johnny and Jasmine? My mother yelped, her voice nearly entirely drowned out by the growling screams and loud bangs. Do I look like I fucking know? My father barked. Get the fuck out of here. Find the Jack cried out in pain. It was a sort of noise that nightmares are made of. Son of a bitch! The sound of flesh pounding against flesh filled the air. Don't hurt him, my mother shouted. Fuck off, Jim screamed. Get off me! Get off me! Rapid footfalls exploded, getting closer and closer. I curled tighter into my ball and sank into the corner. I imagined David scaling the walls, coming for me at full speed. Jasmine, my mother screamed. Johnny! I took everything in me to peel my eyes open and search for my mother. I found her desperately running toward the stairs. I'm here, I tried to shout, but the words died as soon as they left me. I sucked in a deep breath and uncurled from myself. I'm here, I said louder. I'm here. Relief washed over her features when she spotted me. I kept my eyes locked on my mother as she rushed up the stairs. Joey clung to her, looking shaken up but unharmed. My spine tingled in anticipation and anxiety. I was waiting for Jim or David to jump out of nowhere and snatch her away. It never happened. She came to a stop safely at my side. I hadn't noticed until that very moment that I was shaking and sobbing almost uncontrollably. Where's Johnny? She demanded. I shook my head. My body and mind were numb. I opened my mouth to answer, but no noise came out. I tried again, and with the same result. It wasn't until the third attempt that I managed a small choked, I don't know. I'm right here, Johnny's voice rang out from the bedroom behind me. I jumped and let out a shriek of horror. With images of empty eyes and pointed teeth dancing in my mind, I spun around, eyes urgently searching for the source of the noise, only to find a shaking, crying Johnny retreat from the closet. Mom immediately spun around, heading toward the stairs. She waved for us to follow her. Let's go, let's go. We're going out to the car, let's go. She shouted rapidly, giving us no time at all to think before she barked her next identical command. My mind was moving slow, and as a result, it got stuck on one detail. Why are we going to the car? I demanded. What about Jack and Dad? There were very few things I considered certainties. Most of the ones I'd once clung to had been ripped out from under me when David had arrived. But among the very few left was the knowledge that under no circumstance would Jack or Dad ever leave us anywhere. Ever. Don't argue with me, my mother snapped. Get your ass up, let's go. Bang! No! Hold him down, my dad shouted. No, 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 the knife! Don't let him get the knife! A metallic clank hit the ground, and both Jack and Jim shouted. My downstairs was flooded with the loud growled sort of noises. Hold him still, my father shouted. Okay, Banks. Are you scared? Come here.
Oh.
Interrupting.
He says this is too much.
He's saying it's too scary. Hold him still, my father shouted. I'm trying, Jack snapped. I stayed in my place, shaking, tears streaming down my face. My mother stomped toward me, her eyes filled with sudden fiery ire. She grabbed my arm and wrenched me upright. I cried out, hot pain blooming along my shoulder. Shut up, my mother screamed, her face just inches from my own. Shut the hell up and get downstairs. I didn't argue. The sound of feet stomping against the floor and the bang and clatter of a chair falling to the ground sliced through the air. Jim wailed, his voice deep and angry. I walked slowly, following my mother, but dreading going anywhere near my brother. I didn't want to see him. I didn't want to see what had become of him. But there was only a small, muffled word from my father and Jack. I felt like I was walking to death row as my foot hit every wooden step individually, getting me closer and closer to the source of the noise. Dread bubbled up inside of me. My feet hit the last step too soon. I found myself following my mother and Johnny through the living room and past the kitchen. I managed to keep my eyes away from the kitchen entirely for nearly 5 whole seconds before curiosity got the best of me. Johnny and Dad looked exhausted. Their clothing was ripped in places and stretched, giving it an all-over sort of disheveled look, their hair sticking out in every direction. Jack was bent over, huffing, trying to catch his breath. Sweat and blood gleamed along his brow. Crimson oozed through the fingers of the hand that clamped down upon his left arm just below the shoulder. It dripped onto the floor with a slow sort of pitter-patter. Jim was shouting and growling, sounding more like an injured animal than a human. He was rocking the chair back and forth, causing the wooden legs to crash against the floor. His hands were firmly bound behind him. Duct tape circled his chest and connected him to the chair. The gray tape did the same for each of his legs, and he shrieked furiously. His eyes moved to me as I stared, and he stopped. His whole body went still. He glared up at me from behind sunken eyes. A sinister laugh trickled from between his lips. Dad stood up and crossed the room to stop at Jack's side. Let's see. His words drew me away from my thoughts, allowing me to pull my eyes away from Jim. I watched, with worry etched into my brow, as Jack winced as he pulled up his shirt over his torso. His arm retreated from the sleeve. A large gash stared back at the world, perched just below his shoulder. Blood trickled down his bronze skin, leaving streaks of crimson behind. My dad turned the arm this way and that to get a better look. His brows were furrowed, his lips pressed together into a thin line. It was the look he got when he was deep in thought. You need stitches, he decided, looking back to my mother. Take Jack to go to the hospital. Not a chance in hell, Jack answered. He pulled away from my father's grasp stubbornly. I'm not about to leave you and the kids here alone with him. I'll be fine. We've got gauze in the medicine cabinet. I've got deeper cuts while fucking around in the barn, and I've never gone in for those. You remember the nail I shoved through my foot while jumping off the back of your truck? He asked. He was doing a fantastic job of ignoring Jim, who raged just behind him. I, however, was not. I couldn't peel my eyes away from him for more than just a minute or two at a time. You remember the hospital visit afterwards? Dad pressed on. Jim stared me down, his tongue running over his teeth. In a sing-song sort of voice, he began to chant something I couldn't understand. The lights flickered. You gonna call Father Brown? Jack asked. Dad gave a nod. Then I'll go in after he gets here. You're gonna need help if he gets loose, Jack said, motioning to Jim. Jack's eyes softened the moment they hit Jim. Demon dwelling within him or not, the outside form belonged to our brother, and I could see from the look in his eyes that this hurt. It hurt more. I hurt more than It hurt more than it hurt those times David had terrorized us in his own form. It hurt in a different sort of way, one that even now I'm not sure I fully understand. I'm sorry, Jimmy, Jack said, his voice sounding hollow and defeated. This will all be over soon. Jim's features soured, his lips pulled back, revealing teeth. His nose crinkled, his eyes went hard and dark. Oh, no, it won't, he hissed angrily. We're just getting started, Jackie. No one tried to talk to Jim after that. Dad called Father Brown and asked that he come down right away. I didn't hear the whole conversation, but I gathered that Jim was possessed by David, something that I think to some degree I already knew. Jim spent the next 20 minutes struggling in his place, grunting and screaming. He made low, angry noises that sounded more animalistic than human. He fought against the ropes. He growled. He hissed. He tossed out insults to each and every one of us. He laughed, a high pitched, uncontrolled sort of laugh. He whispered words I couldn't understand in languages I knew he didn't know under his breath. He screamed wordlessly at the air. Twice he toppled over his chair. Both times he tried to bite my father as he righted him. Seeing Jim in the state he was in was hard, but there wasn't much of a choice. Mom had to be there to help. She was the only one of us that had any medical training at all. She'd worked briefly in a hospital as a nursing assistant. If Mom was inside to help with the medical stuff and Jack and Dad were inside to retrain Jim in case he got loose, then what choice did we have? We were stuck. So we stayed in the kitchen. We cried. We watched our older brother as he struggled with the demon that wreaked havoc on his body. My mother tried time and time again to place cold washcloths on his forehead or on his neck, and each time he would buck or turn suddenly and try to bite at her fingers. Slowly, the family began to break down. My father was angry, and I could see it all over his face. I watched him seethe, likely pissed that there was nothing he could do to end his son's suffering. I watched my mother cry and plead with it to release her baby. I watched as the demon laughed at her pain. At some point, while I sat against the wall, Joey in my lap, trying to ignore the screams and sobs, Johnny had gotten up to stare out the window. His shoulders slumped. His body stood with a sort of tilt to it, and his head hung. He looked entirely broken. I couldn't help but feel bad for him, as much of an ass as he'd been to me earlier. I knew on some level I'd deserved it. I had brought this hell to us. I deserved his anger, and he deserved an outlet to release it. Perhaps I didn't rationalize it like that at the time, but I remember feeling at peace with the idea that Johnny would likely never forgive me. I was okay with that because I'd never forgive myself. I stood up, picking up Joey, and wandered over to the window as well, needing a change, wanting not to have to focus on Jim anymore. We watched the familiar silver car slow at the front of our driveway. Dad, Father Brown is here, Johnny called, his voice obtunded. The Sable pulled into the driveway and parked directly beside my father's station wagon. The father and two men I didn't recognize stepped out, stretching and pulling bags out of the trunk. Not more than 10 feet away from me, Jim began to laugh, a deep, angry, sour sort of noise that caused my stomach to flip and turn. His eyes widened and his mouth opened. He shouted something to the heavens that I didn't understand. His body began to sway as he repeated the words over and over again. There was a loud click that drew my attention back outside. The barn door opened. Boars and sows rushed out. "Dad, the pigs are out!" I shrieked. The boars were dangerous, I knew that much. Dad had a very strict rule about us not going anywhere near their pen, and he always warned us that if they tasted blood, they'd frenzy and maul anything in their way. I watched terror wash over the faces of the men in our driveway. They were too far away to be able to run to the home quickly enough to avoid being mauled. They began to scramble for the still open doors of the car, seeking safety within its confines, but the doors slammed. My heart sank as I watched them pull desperately at them. Father Brown fumbled with his keys, looking back at the pigs who rushed them with fear dancing in his eyes. Heavy footsteps tore past me. I looked up, and at some point Dad had gone to get his gun. He threw the door open, and it slammed against the side of the house with a sharp bang. "Get inside!" he shouted. He raised his gun. Bang, bang, bang! 3 boars went down. They thrashed and screamed on the ground. Blood poured out of their skulls, staining the once pale-colored gravel. Dad was one hell of a shot. I'd never seen him miss anything. He and Jack routinely had contests, and my father always bragged that if he could see it, he could shoot it. I'd never been more thankful for how often he practiced. I watched in absolute horror as the group of men stumbled all over themselves to get inside. They tripped and stuttered up the stairs, but the boars never faltered. One particularly large black boar charged forward, mouth gaping, and it was less than 2 feet from Father Brown's legs as he surged forward. The pig began to close the distance. Father Brown changed course, opening my father up for the shot. Bang! The pig went down. It shrieked in pain, but died quickly. The men climbed up the steps, bursting through the door and spilling into the living room. My father slammed the door shut. The sound of hooves on the wooden porch echoed through the home. Father Brown panted, anger washing over his features. "We nearly died. Why were the pigs out?" Jim screamed and rocked back and forth in the chair. "Get out!" he ordered angrily. His voice was deep, but sounded split, as though there were 2 voices talking in unison, harmonized completely. It made me want to vomit. Father Brown's eyes widened with something akin to fear. His attention snapped to Jim. The color leaked from his face. "Dear God," he whispered, hand on his chest. Father Brown stepped into the kitchen, flanked by his two companions. Jim huffed and growled. Spittle flew out of his mouth, and his back arched. His nose crinkled, his lips curled. "Stay back!" he barked. "Stay back!" His head jerked back and let out a deafening roar. "Get out! Get out!" he roared. "Get out!" Slam! The kitchen door swung wildly, hitting the wall behind it, before slamming closed again. Over and over again it went on, just as it had the day we'd left for the forest. The kitchen windows slid up before slamming back down. Long cracks spidered along them, but still they continued. The glass began to chip and fall away, hitting the ground, but they never slowed. "Get out!" he shrieked. "Get away!" Father Brown swallowed hard. With shaking hand, he placed his bag on the table and pulled from it a Bible, and an odd metal thing with holes on the top. I didn't know it at the time, but it was designed to sprinkle holy water. The two other men also pulled items from their own bags. The shorter, balding man with thick glasses and a limp brandished a large metal cross and a Bible. The taller, thinner man with wispy brown hair took from his pouch a few small coins, a Bible, and some medical supplies. "We're about to begin," Father Brown said solemnly, looking at us. Usually I wouldn't allow the children to be present, but I'd say here is the safest place for them. Looking back, I know now that he was worried David would find a way to kill us, just as he'd tried to kill the father and the others. His eyes returned to Johnny and I. They were hard and cold. When he spoke, he did so in a way that left no room for arguments. "Listen carefully. Do exactly as I tell you. You understand? When we begin, it will say and do things that your brother Jim would never do. You must forgive him what's about to happen. It isn't him we're dealing with tonight. When it speaks, do not speak back. Do not listen to anything it says. Don't even look at it." The father's words shook me to the very core. I gave him nothing more than a weak nod of my head. Hopefully this will all be over soon. Jim laughed, and a low, growling sort of noise came out of him. It oozed from his lips and tumbled through the air, broken and jagged. The sickly noise slithered up my spine and made my heart thrum out of control. Suddenly the air around us felt heavy and too warm. Jim's neck craned around to stare out the window. He hissed a few broken words that made no sense to me. "Shit," Johnny breathed as he nudged my side. I spun around and followed my shaking brother's line of sight. There, surrounded by puddles of their own blood, the pigs that my father had shot down began to stir.
Oh
It was
no.
small at first, just a kick of the leg or a twitch of the head, but soon they began to struggle to their feet. They stumbled back and forth, their hooves clip-clopping on the blood-stained gravel. I looked on in horror, watching bits of blood, skull, and things far too dark and thick to be blood fall from their heads. To this day, I'm convinced David raised 4 pigs from the dead. My lungs emptied, and I vomited. As I watched their once lifeless bodies roam the outside, tears streamed down my face. I would have nightmares about that for years to come. Father Brown turned to me as I whimpered, following my line of sight. "Come away from there," he called. I looked back to see his eyes filled with fear, the color gone from his cheeks. He looked as though he'd aged 20 years. I don't think he'd ever seen anything like the lurid scene that unfolded outside. I didn't have to be told twice. I shuffled across the floor, keeping my eyes low and away from Jim. I found a place in the corner, as far away from Jim as I could get without actually leaving the room. With Joey on my lap, I sat my arms wrapped tightly around him. I hadn't noticed Johnny leave the window, but soon enough he sat beside me, tears streaming down his cheeks. The 3 of us huddled together and sobbed. Father Brown began to speak. "In the name and authority of the Lord Jesus Christ, we renounce all the power of darkness which may exist in this area or in the life of Jeremy Isaac for any reason. We bind all evil spirits assigned to Jeremy Isaac and forbid you to operate in any way in the name of Jesus Christ." Jim began to laugh. His head shook back and forth slowly at first and then more rapidly, his movements becoming jerky and unpredictable. Saliva and foam began to spill from his parted lips, and he rocked his chair back and forth. A loud buzz hummed, and slowly bees, flies, wasps, and a dozen other insects began to pour into the room.
Oh
Try
god.
as my mother might, she couldn't find where they were coming from. It was as though he were materializing them. His choked laugh never ceased, and the father repeated the prayer over and over, Jim laughing each time. It wasn't until the 9th time the 3 men chanted it together that disgust and anger washed over Jim's features. His laughter ended. Fire burned just beneath the surface, and he raged, screaming and cursing as the men spoke. There was a terrible squealing noise from outside as the pigs began to drop back to the ground. The bugs, too, fell to the ground. Father Brown shook the metal container, splashing holy water along Jim as he spoke, this time with more conviction. I command you, devil, give me your name and the time of your departure. Fuck you, Jim shouted. His whole body went rigid. Languages I'd never heard and couldn't identify spilled from his mouth in a voice that didn't belong to him. Father Brown regarded him with cautious eyes. The tall, skinny man went to his side, placing a finger on his bound wrist and throwing out numbers. At the time, I didn't know they represented his pulse, only that the numbers fluctuated from very high to very low. I command you, devil, give me your name and the time of your departure, Father Brown shouted. No! Jim growled. Like my
No. Uh-huh.
his voice more animal than human. Spit flew from his mouth as he shouted, and he rocked in his chair back and forth, his eyes dead and cold. The house began to quake. No, he shouted again. I command you, devil, give me your name and the time of your departure. The three men chanted the words over and over again. Jim's neck craned back and he tried to buck. He tried everything in his power to get out of the chair, but to no avail. Names, he shouted. Names, names, you want my names. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, I rebuke you, evil thing. I command you, devil, give me your name and the time of your departure. Father Brown shouted. Sweat poured down his face, and he repeated the words time and time again. Jim began to shake, his eyes rolling back into his head, his whole body shaking. Foam spilled from his mouth, and his body tensed, and he became rigid again. He's seizing! He's seizing! The taller, skinny man shouted. Someone help me! He was busying himself, trying to push Jim's rigid, bowed body back into a sitting position, and the world seemed to slow. It was as if I had all the time in the world to shout, to Shart.
Shart. Oh.
Some comic relief, right, for
Yeah.
the final stretch.
Uh-huh.
The world seemed to slow. It was as if I had all the time in the world to shout a warning to the second priest, but I couldn't make my voice work. Jim's head snapped up, his eyes gleamed in the dim light, looking almost as though they were glowing. Heavy with the promise of violence, they were no longer his eyes. They belonged to David. A twisted, evil smile played along his lips, curling upward in an almost unreal fashion. Jim lunged, and he bit down on the man's cheek. The priest screamed in pain. Suddenly, every adult in the room was on him. They tried to pull him away, but to no avail. No avail. Jesus. Jim's teeth sunk in further and further, and the wails of agony became more desperate. The priest flailed and shrieked. He gripped Jim's shoulders, trying to gain enough leverage to pull himself away. Beneath the panic of the moment, I could hear a slow, joyous sort of laugh that trickled from Jim's chest. His eyes gleamed with amusement and satisfaction. Finally, Jim released the man. He stumbled back, and blood poured from the perfect circular wound left behind. Boisterous laughter flooded the room, as blood and mirth poured from Jim's lips. No names, he hissed. No names.
Ugh. Oh, God. Whoa.
Really, kind of fumbled that last bit, but we made it.
No. We needed that.
So flippin' creepy, man.
Yeah.
Real exorcism vibes at this point.
Yeah. Oh, the pigs. That's weird.
Dude.
I don't
Coming
like
back
that.
to life? No, thank you. No,
Zombie
thank
pigs.
you.
Scary.
Literally zombie pigs.
Yeah.
Zombie piggies. No likey.
Speaking of that, have you watched The Last of Us?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Not quite zombies, I guess, but pretty much.
So scary, dude.
Yeah.
So scary.
Creepy.
But no, I mean, I don't think this is a spoiler because other episodes leading up to it have been like this too, but no zombies. It's every couple of episodes you get one with no zombies and you're like, where are the zombies at? And the next episode is 9. It's the final one.
Oh, really? Okay. And
yeah.
It came out
so they gotta
yesterday.
Wrap it all up.
I think.
Sundays.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, unfortunately. I'm stressed.
Yeah.
I cannot wait to watch the finale. Holy fuck.
What a good show.
So good.
I'm surprised that I enjoyed it. I thought Dave was going to love it and I was just going to watch in the background, but no, I'm engaged.
It's the story is just so good and it's scary, but it's not. Yeah, but it's suspense scary, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like, I don't know. I mean, I was going to say it's
It's
not like
not
shit you're
horror.
actually worried about, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's not horror, but it is shit actually I'm like genuinely concerned about happening. Especially cuz there are all these like very like um inflammatory articles that are like, this is
Yeah.
actually possible. And you're like, shut
Yeah.
up.
Shut
Like,
up.
don't stop saying that. Fuck.
Maybe we should do an episode about funguses or fungi and like weird
Truly.
ancient viruses that they're reanimating for
Literally.
whatever reason.
Oh my God. I
That's
hate it so much.
spooky.
Spooky. Okay. Our mascot has been such a shit disturber this week. He
He's
has been
trying
like
to
biting and
rearrange.
scratching. I know. He's like, oh, I'm going to fuck with this thing you have.
Yeah.
Can we not do that, please, small sir? He's mad because I haven't given him dinner yet, and it's 3:50.
Oh.
I'm like,
Uh-huh.
it's not dinner time, boy.
It's time. He eats
He's
the
acting
senior
up.
special
He
at
does
4
need this. Are
p.m.
you a senior? He's looking at me like, obviously, dumbass.
Duh. I'm ready for dinner.
Classic bonks.
Yeah.
Well, that concludes our St. Patrick's Day episode, you guys. Hope you enjoyed it, leaving you on a cliffhanger as per usual.
Mm-hmm.
But the next holiday episode, we will be wrapping her up.
Yeah.
So
Oh, I
prepare
can't wait.
yourselves. I
I'm
know, me too.
excited. Oh yeah, April Fool's Day. That's what we decided. Not too
Oh
long.
yes, April Fools. Yeah, not too
Yes.
long at all. Okay, guys. Well, follow us. You can follow us. It's not a demand. You can
It
follow
is.
us. Oh no, it's a demand. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Girls Gone Spooky. And if you have any spooky stories or even any scary stories that you've come across on Reddit or elsewhere that you want us to read for holiday episodes, send them our way to girlsgonespooky@gmail.com. You can also DM us on Facebook or IG.
Yep.
And until next week, stay spooky, friends.
Stay spooky. Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Happy St. Patty's. Bye.
Bye.